Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be celebrating our 10th year anniversary of the Audiobook Lovin Series. And we are chatting today with narrator Grayson Owens. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I've had you on my list, and I'm like, oh, for this celebration stuff, I'm like, who do I want to be my first? I'm like, oh, okay. I sent out a bunch of emails. You win.
I responded first.
Yes, yes, exactly. See, lots of firsts happening right now, so it's great.
I love being first. I
Yes.
get it. Yeah.
Hey, I love popping a good cherry, okay? I am happy with that too. And stuff like that. So I get it. I totally get it. But thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We're gonna start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been narrating, and how you got into this.
As a lot of people know, I'm a college professor, and so I'm an actor and a college professor. I teach acting at a university, and so the way I got started in this is a student of mine asked me once how to get into audiobook narration. And as I often tell people, I had looked into it a long time ago as an actor, but when I started I'm one of those kind of actors that when I want to get involved in something, I'm a Virgo, so I study the hell out of it. And I was investigating and watching all these videos about technique and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the videos back then were really emphasizing not really acting and just kind of very monotone, neutral readings and not, allowing the listener to kind of fill in the blanks. And I didn't really want to get involved in that. It's just not the kind of actor that I am. And so I had never really gotten into it before. And so when my student asked me this, a college friend of mine, Marnie Young, who runs Audio Sorceress, I knew that I had seen her social media posts and I knew that was running a company, which I didn't even know what that meant at the time. So I reached out to her and I said, how does somebody get involved in audiobook narration? And she had this, I guess she gets asked that question a lot. So she had a one
Yes.
sheet. And so,
That
and
is
so
Marnie.
yeah. And so she said, she goes, well, I get asked this a lot. So here's a one sheet. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay. And then she goes, you can give that to your student. And so I did. And she goes, have you ever done this? And of course, we were communicating via email. And she goes, have you ever done this before? And I said, no. And she goes, I remember you having a good voice. Like, would you want to get into it? And I said, I don't really know how. Like, I had looked into it and I didn't, blah, blah, blah. So again, my Virgo kicked in and I started researching what I needed to do to get, the equipment and all that kind of stuff together. So eventually my booth was four cushions from my couch and a very inexpensive Yeti microphone. And I produced some samples, which I sent to her. And Audio Sorceress started working with me. And within, I think, like 2 to 3 weeks, I landed my first book, which turned into a 12-book series, the Untouchable series by Heather Long. And then I had like several months of success where I was landing almost every single audition that I had. And so I got really cocky really quickly. Um, and and really enjoyed what I was doing, but it had always been kind of a hobby at that point. And then about 2 years ago, I had made enough money within the year, and I was tired of barking dogs and lawnmowers and everything else in my neighborhood. So I went ahead and invested in a booth. And then at that point, my productivity had kind of increased, and I was able to do more work in a shorter period of time. And so I started producing a little bit more and started reaching out to other companies. And so I'd reached out to several companies and got on their rosters. And then things really kind of started taking off last fall, where people actually kind of started knowing my name a little bit more. And so that's kind of how I got to today. And you feeling like there was a necessity in asking me to be on your podcast, which is weird for me.
Weird. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Marnie is fantastic. There's been several times where she'll post something on social media and I'm like, who is that voice? And it's happened with both the males and the females. And I'm like, damn, they sound really good. And then I shoot Marnie a note. Especially if it's a multicast and duet narration, and I'm going, okay, there's two different guys. Who's who?
Yeah.
So that's when I sent her the note too, and I'm like, hey, who this? And so I remember actually having that with you in one of the samples when she was posting on social, and so I added you to the list. We love getting to know you guys better, aside from just the characters that you play. And a lot of times we fall in love with the persona, the same way that we sometimes fall in love with an author. There's been several authors that I love and adore because I met them at a conference or a signing, and I buy their books. Have I read them? Maybe not, because there's too many books. I have a long list. The same thing with the narrators. There's many times where love and adore you guys and everything like that, but I may not have listened to something because there's just not enough hours in the day. And I've been told there's this thing called sleep that's supposed to happen, but I don't know about that.
I don't know what that is either. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not the only one. All right. Good. Whoosh, first while there. And I'm like, and I've been told that I'm not. So I'm like, okay, great. So this is where, these kind of conversations happen because it's fascinating that you as a professor, especially acting, have you added audiobook into your curriculum?
I did actually. It took me it well I have to selfishly admit I added it into the curriculum because I was able to get funding from the university to buy some better equipment if I
Nice.
put it in the curriculum. So that's what I did. I went to the university and got some funding to buy some better microphone equipment and stuff like that for myself. And in exchange, I created an audiobook narration class that I teach every other year for my students. And it was a great class initially because I got into all of this in 2020. So right when everybody was getting into it because of COVID, it was when I decided to try to break into audiobooks. But it was a great class to create because I could do it virtually with the students. We didn't actually have to meet in person because we just met over Zoom, and then that way we could listen to each other without, being in the same room with each other. And so yeah, so it's a class that I alternate it with stage combat every other year. So
Stage
yeah.
combat. Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah, which is I'm teaching that this year, and then I'll go back to audiobook narration. Well, I would do that next year. I'm on a sabbatical actually to kind of pursue more voiceover work. I'm going to try next year to start exploring video games and animation and all that kind of stuff. So,
Nice. Okay. So that's the reason why I was asking is because there's a lot of stuff. I'm like, man, why didn't nobody come into my high school senior year or technically junior year to tell me about this kind of a career? Editing books, doing book covers, being the photographer for set book covers, narration. We don't have these conversations. Usually the same cop, doctor, nurse, lawyer, which are great and all admirable careers, but not really a whole lot in the arts, but still productive and financially stable to some extent. And so the fact that you have that in your curriculum is fantastic, that people are able to learn more.
and it is such a great area of acting to get into because it's self-sustaining. You don't have to depend on other people. You can set up your own little booth and record. You can pursue work on ACX on your own. Even, once you get on rosters, then you're pursuing the work on your own. You don't have to go through an agent in order to be able to get the work. And it's an income that you can build around other things. It's as a stage actor or a film actor, it's hard to do that work around other careers or other forms of income because you're having to take off long periods of time for rehearsals or on-set shoots or whatever. But with audiobooks, you can record on your own time. Like you said, who needs sleep? And so, um, so you're kind of, and so I teach this to my students and I tell them it's like my goal is that by the end of this class, by that day that we end this class, you can go online, create a profile on ACX, and you can immediately start pursuing work and start making money as an actor for the first time. And so, I really, and several of my students have done that. They've, when they graduate, they immediately start trying to pursue this work, which is great for them because there's not a lot of young people in the industry. So,
Yeah.
getting more young voices out there so that, 47-year-old men like me aren't trying to play the 12-year-olds.
But also what I love about it, like if that was an option when I was in college, I would have taken it because I was in chorus and guitar ensemble, but I'm not your typical, like I'm too tall for sometimes for the girls, right? Usually they want the girls to be like 5'4", 5'2". I'm 5'7". But it's the same thing when it comes down to if, when the book is described as the character being 6'7", build body, swimmer's body or fill in the blanks, as long as your voice sounds good, you can play that role. And or if they have blonde hair, but you're a brunette, or in my case, magenta, at the moment.
Well, and that's, and that's the wonderful thing about it is that, as an actor on stage and film, you become so concerned about the way that you look. And when you get into the audiobook narration or any kind of voiceover work, you're not worried about that anymore. And there is such a diversity of need for vocal types that even if you don't, because that was the big thing, me getting into romance. I don't have, that Aiden Snow, Jacob Morgan, deep growly kind of thing. So I didn't really think that I would be appealing in this industry because I felt like that's what everybody wanted. But the first series I landed was a bunch of teenage into college year age kids. So like it worked because I was able to kind of do that within a younger sounding voice because of where my vocal quality sits. So it's a really great industry to get into because you don't feel, at least I haven't felt as self-conscious about myself in doing the work, which I think is really wonderful. You can hide in your little booth behind the characters in a way that you can't really do when you're on stage or in film.
I don't see it as hiding. I see it as being able to wear my comfy PJs and my comfy slippers and still, get income and also have fun and be able to do the work, which is also like I'm such a lover of working from home, way more productive. But that is interesting that you thought that you didn't have the deeper voice because your register isn't on the higher end, and I think, and even then, like mentioning Jacob and Aiden, their normal speaking voice is not that deep. They have to
That's
go
true. Yeah.
down,
Yeah. To create. Yeah.
to create that. And a lot of times people like, I don't know if I would be able to listen to that deeper register the entire freaking rest of my life, kind of a thing. And so it's for certain moments, I guess, too, but also means the same thing when they're like, how do you describe gravelly? And I'm like, well, there's a bunch of rocks. I'm like, oh no, you mean voice. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
And
Well, and
then
I've had a lot of people correct me because they say that I do have that. And but the thing is that like even the voice I'm talking to you in right now, which is my usual normal speaking voice, is actually different than it was even 4 years ago. And I think it's just because I've gotten used to talking in this lower register because I'm usually a very kind of high pitched guy. In my normal, like, and when I get really excited about things, I get into a
I
high
was gonna
register
say that. I was
voice.
gonna ask you because I do the same thing.
Yeah, no. Like like when I'm telling stories, just to friends and stuff like that, when I get really worked up, I get into a higher register of my voice, typically. But yeah, I mean, I know it's and that's kind of where the technique of all of this stuff kind of comes into is kind of figuring out how to find that sense, and it's something that I've tried to develop. It's one of the things that I'm trying to develop the skill set in to kind of specialize in is kind of creating character voices so that when especially if I'm, the only main male character in a book, that I'm creating very diverse character sounds so that you can tell the difference between them. I feel like that's what's going to set us apart from the machines is our ability to create that where, yeah, you can listen to my voice and then create an entire book of me narrating it. But what that AI is not going to do is alter my voice to create the characters that I create as an actor. That's the thing that can set me aside from the AI. And so that's one of the things that I try to work on as an actor, in this industry. But
It's important too because it's not, I think sometimes listeners and readers will get stuck on the thinking about how the voice sounds when it comes down to those characters. And the reality is that you can sound the same, but as you start changing your cadence, and then you start
right.
sounding different. And the same thing with like when you're saying when you get excited, if that character gets excited. And the other thing too is the emotion that you guys bring into it, whether it's a laughter or a more steamy kind of scene or the banter. I love the banter. I think it's one of my
God,
favorite
I
things
love the
about the
banter.
books, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
a sarcastic lead heroine, probably because I, identify as that. But anyways, it's just one of those things that computers as AI will never be able to replicate. And if they ever do, we're in trouble. But it ain't going to be anytime soon. And so that's where I think that as human voices, we have those characteristics, whether it's that crack of the voice because they're saying something a little bit more sentimental, or he's trying to hide the tears behind. And this could be tears of rage, not necessarily tears of sadness, because we
Right.
do that. Yeah, don't ever think that because a girl is crying is because she's sad or you hurt her. No, it might be your sign to run. Because if she's mad crying, you need to run. But yeah, so how do you when it comes down to you getting the gig, have you also done it at school with the class as far as not just the acting part, but the business side a little bit, like prepping a book? Like, what does your process look like when you've been cast and now you get the script?
So my process has changed drastically over the last several months as my workload has increased, and I can't necessarily say right now that's for the better. I think I have some things I need to learn and adjust to, and the reason is because when I first started out, I read every single book cover to cover, whether it was my chapter or not. I read it cover to cover so that I understood all of the nuances of the storyline, and I had the freedom to do that because my projects were scattered, far enough apart that I could do that. Recently, I don't have the time to do that. As I've been wanting to accept more and more projects, I don't have the time to actually read the books cover to cover. So I've been trying to develop a new process of prepping books where I typically will skim through the book, focusing mainly on dialogue, because I find that I can usually get a lot of, especially romance books, I have found are pretty heavy in dialogue, and you can get a good sense of what the plot is from what the characters are saying to each other. And you can also get a good sense of who the characters are by what other characters are saying about them and some of their internal dialogue. So usually I do that. I highlight the script so that I can easily see when the character voices are changing. But one of the things that I've started doing really within the last month or so, which I actually kind of really enjoy, and Angelina Rocca told me that this is what she does, and so I started having the courage to do it, and that is just setting out and reading it without having read it before, just kind of experiencing the book in the moment as I go along. And it is very freeing because I'm kind of discovering the story in the same way that the listener is discovering the story. And so I just try to focus on kind of communicating to the listener in the moment what it is that I'm experiencing reading the story for the first time. And I have various levels of success with that right now. And so, again, it's constantly a developing process. And that's one of the things that's changed with the thing that I teach in that class is that before in the class I taught the importance of reading cover to cover. And then I was like, man, no, if you want to do enough projects where you are making enough money to really support this, you don't really have time to read cover to cover. You have to find a way of prepping the books in a different way.
Yeah.
Um,
Or hire a
a
prepper.
reader, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
hire a
I know that
prepper.
there are people who do that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know that there are people who do that, and I haven't even investigated that yet. But
Yeah. But man, you guys are brave to do those code reads because that's also where like in your chapters, so sometimes like when it happens with duets where you're only doing your one character's voice, it's usually in someone else's dialogue or chapter that says, yeah, because he's Russian. And then you've been doing a cowboy accent the entire time.
yes, that has happened a couple of times. I'm doing a sci-fi series right now, and 3 books into the
Oh
series, one
no.
of the characters all of a sudden goes in his deep Russian accent, and I was like, oh my God, I haven't been doing that for 3 books. Like, how in the world can I possibly go back? I can't change that now.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, occasionally that does happen, but it is actually relatively rare that an author doesn't set you up
Oh, good.
with the information. So there's been a couple of times where it's kind of backfired on me, but it's usually a tonal thing. Like they'll talk about the tone of the voice, and I wasn't quite doing that tone of the voice, and so it hasn't, knock on wood, it hasn't shot me in the foot yet. But it is. I mean, that is kind of one of the biggest risks when you try to kind of fly by the seat of your pants. But as an actor, I'm used to having to do that because a lot of the auditions that you have for film and television is often cold reads. You get handed the script, right before you walk into the audition. And so I'm kind of used to having to kind of create character on the fly and kind of, delve into the moment to moment in a live read. So and I find it rejuvenating and kind of exciting to do. So those as long as those moments don't happen where you're suddenly like, oh my God, I have to go back and record the entire book because I didn't realize this person was, Irish.
Chapter 45.
Yes.
Yeah. No, but it's true because when we're reading a book, we have no idea who done it, right? We don't know that's actually the bad guy or whatever. And then, to be able to not tell us in your voice because you're giving us the villain voice, it's important. So I totally see where that code read could be very beneficial. And you're right, when it comes down to casting, I mean, didn't even really think about that too. The whole auditioning for film and TV is a lot like that. Here's a script, by the way, they're at the beach. Go.
Go, right, yeah. Well, and it's also, I mean, I think also because the industry has started changing to authors being more participatory in selecting their casts, it has made authors more involved in that casting process, and they've begun to learn more about what is needed for those actors. And so a lot more times now, either when you go into the audition or even just when you're going into working on the project, the author has created a plot synopsis for you, character descriptions, and quite often in those character descriptions, it will say, if there is a dialect that is needed, like all the companies have been really great about creating that information for you in advance so that you can just kind of do your prep from a synopsis page, and that's been very beneficial, and especially like you said for those the surprise moments where it's like the dark voice that happens for the first 58 chapters. And then in the final chapter, you find out that it's been one of the recurring characters all along and you just didn't know it. So a lot of times those synopsis pages kind of help you do that. So I'm really grateful to the fact as an actor, I'm really grateful that the industry has kind of started doing that a lot more. The production
Yeah.
companies have started asking for it more.
Yeah, I think also too it eliminates a little bit of those errors in case you are not prepping it at all. Because there's some narrators that do that. They don't prep at
Correct.
all. Oh goodness. I am a sucker when it comes down to accents. And I tend to pick them up too if I'm hanging out with someone a lot, or if I go visit like Savannah, Georgia, when I'm there for a couple of, even if it's just the weekend, by the time that weekend ends, I sound like a little bit of that Southern twang kind of thing. What's your favorite accent to perform?
Oh God. Uh, I always love a little Irish. I really like Irish a lot. I've done Russian quite a few, which I really like. I really like doing the Russian accents. I just really like doing dialects, to be honest with you. I find them very fun. As an actor, it's an easy thing to throw in to change the character immediately. It goes outside of just kind of what your tone ranges are and stuff like that, and allows you to kind of play with something that's different. So I always like that. I don't really know. There are certain accents that I don't like doing because they scare me a lot. Australian is one I've always struggled with. Um, yeah. And I had a book that I did that was my character was South African, and the female main character, and I was doing dual narration. The female main character was Australian. And those two dialects are so incredibly close to each other that it was extremely difficult doing that book. Like it added hours onto the book. And I'm doing a series right now with Marnie Young, actually, Destiny series, and it's about shifter. It's a shifter romance, and Marnie came into the work and she was like, "Hey, let's do all of these like interesting dialects with all of the characters." And it was such an amazing idea until I started working on the book, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is so complicated trying to keep track of who they all are." And it's so we're doing British and Scottish and Irish, and like it's crazy when you add those in, and sometimes how complicated it can make it when it's not native to you. But I love playing around with dialects, all of them.
Yeah, it's always a gamble sometimes too, because you get that one person that busts out, they don't sound Irish at all. And in this case, it was Gary Furlong, and he is Irish. So you never know. It was in
Well,
a review, not kidding you, dude. It really was.
well, and typically what I try to do is I try to just find a coloring of it. Like, because I feel like if I try to go all into it and try to pretend like I'm going to do every single aspect of it, I'm just setting myself up for failure. But if I find tip, because typically most of the characters that you're doing are, of course, speaking English. So either they are, American, but they came from that place, or whatever. So in most cases, you can argue the fact, okay, well, they've been influenced by an American culture, so the dialect is not as strong. So, I usually tend to try to find a lighter quality so that it relieves me a little bit from the criticism. But God knows, I'm sure it exists.
That or the comparison to Lucky Charms.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
that's not good either. And it's
Well,
not
and
sexy either.
and Irish is one of those that is like, it's really easy to just really give into it
Yes.
and really just really go deep
Mhm.
into the way the dialect works.
That
But
in Scottish too. You just start having fun.
and then again, an Irish character talking to a Scottish character, and I get so
Mhm.
lost
Oh
in what I'm
God, yeah.
doing. It's.
And that's also where when the author decides to have all of them over for dinner in the exact same scene at the table, talking with like seven different characters, all the guys.
Well, and that's one of the things. I mean, fortunately, I've gotten compliments before because, in Nicole Fanning in her Heart of the Inferno series, there's a scene where all of these mafia dons are sitting at a table, and one of them is Italian, and one of them is Russian, and one of them is Irish, and one of them is South African, and one of them is Japanese. And so there were all of these, like literally just one line of dialogue that they would each speak, but they're all talking at the same time, and having to jump in and out of all of those dialects was a lot of fun. And fortunately, most people seem to have enjoyed it. So
Good. Yeah, I mean, again, we love accents. It's always that far and few in between times where we're like, that's not from there. And it could be just be how you say a word. There's a difference between saying, Georgia, if you're from one like Atlanta versus Atlanta, or Louisville. There's a postcard for freaking Louisville that has like
yeah,
15 different pronunciations. So
ways to pronounce it right.
yes,
And
and so
St. Louis and St. Louis, yeah, that's all of
yes, and things like that. So it's okay. As long as the performance is there, we're fine.
it.
So what's the favorite kind of character for you to play? Do you like the paranormals? Do you like more of the mafias? What is it that you love with, a favorite character type?
I don't know that it's really the types that matter to me. It's the complexity of the character that I really enjoy. I like the mafia dons where we get to see how soft they are with their partners or with children or with their family, where you see that they are just human beings that find themselves in a circumstance that make them morally gray. So I mean, it's usually the complexity of the characters that I get drawn to more than a particular type. I've been very fortunate so far because I think I've played around in most of the genres at this point. Lord knows there's going to be something. I think I get to play a lumberjack or something like that coming up soon. That'll be a new one for me. But I think I think it's mainly just the complexity of the characters, and I really enjoy slow burns because of that. Like I really enjoy doing slow burn romances because there's a lot of plot and character development before you get to the spice. And I know a lot of people just want to get right to the spice, but
No,
sometimes I really I'm good. Okay, good. You don't feel that way.
no, I don't.
But I really love building the story and getting there. And as an actor, often you get asked that question of how do you handle the performing the spice scenes? But when you have all of that story to get to it, it's just another expression of a human emotion. It's not, the lusty quality of the character is the same as their anger or their sadness or their pain or whatever. It's just an expression of human emotion when you get there with it. So I think it's the complexity. I've been very fortunate. I mean, all of the authors I've worked with are fantastic authors who are really great at character development. So
Yeah, for me, character development and plot development is extremely important. Could I read a clean, romance that has, closed doors? Absolutely. I've even done, shocker, Amish, uh, romance and even some of the other ones. And for me, I need to have that character development. And that's also why I like slow burns, and that if the sexy time's there, great. If it isn't, if it's going to be used as a filler, is when I have the issue. At that
Right.
point, it just becomes an erotica instead of erotic romance. And the spice levels, we all have different levels of spice. So for some people, that's really spicy. And I'm going, yeah, I'm from Argentina and I don't have a spice meter because we like it all. So it's just one of those things where like people are like mild soft, they're burning their asses off, and I'm going, can I have the Mount St. Helen, please? So it varies just like within the books. If it's going to be used as a filler, to me, I can totally figure that out. I'm like, you could have just kept this as a novella then, and it takes away, I think, a lot from the story. So when we have these characters that are well developed and the relationships are also growing, and we're not going to just break them up because someone didn't talk to each other, because that's another pet of mine. I'm like, just talk to her, just tell her. I've thrown many a books when I was doing physical books across the room because of shit like that, but I don't do devices because those are way more expensive. Uh, but it's true, we need to have good development of characters to have that moment of, oh, okay, that's how that works too. And like again, and I love my spice. I'm not dinging it or anything, but I think there's also like, if it's going to be used as a filler, it's not going to be a good read. And for those that like it, it's, there is erotic romance, and that's what that's there for. And then erotica specifically, where it's no plot, just sex, and
Right.
that's okay. It really is.
What I always jokingly say is the ding dong the pizza guys here kind of plot line.
It's true. I mean, like, hey, if that's what gets, I mean, like, could that happen in real life? Absolutely. I'm sure it has, and power to you if that did happen, both ends.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, for Lucky Pizza Man. Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
know, exactly. And for whoever answered the door that they said yes, it works out. It really does. I'm all for it. Wherever, as long as you're happy and safe and everyone is okay, and of course, consensual, everything's good. Everything is
yeah.
good. Yeah. So you have done a bunch of because romance is like an umbrella term with all these subgenres underneath it, from the paranormal to even the cozy mysteries are under that umbrella. How about outside of romance? Is there a genre that you have yet to narrate or that you're really wanting to do that's outside of romance?
Yeah, when I got into audiobook narration, my dream had always been to do more literary fiction, and I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I always have been my entire life, and one of the things I love about him is that, he writes this delicious horror, but at the same time, his characters are extremely unique and very very specific, and so I've always wanted to do thrillers and horror books and like literary fiction in the realm of like John Irving, and so I've always and I've done some in all of those genres, but I would like to do more in the I kind of again I think it's because so much of it is really becomes majorly plot driven at that point and character development wise, and I really love playing around in those. Right now, I'm in the second book of a sci-fi series called The Last Battleship series by Calvert, and it's really really great, and it's been fun being able to step out of the romance to kind of play around in that field again, kind of living out my Star Wars dreams. So yeah, there's really nothing I don't enjoy doing. I've done a lot of nonfiction business books, and even those I find fascinating. I got into acting because as a human being, I've just always been fascinated by 1,000 things, and I just love learning about new things. So, my natural curiosity means that I really kind of enjoy playing around in all of the genres.
Well, I will tell you, if my corporate, Fortune 500 corporation that I was doing for 16 years would actually use voice actors to do their training, probably be significantly easier on the time. Because sometimes I'm going, oh my God, can I just mute you? I'll read it. I'll read it. I'll read it. Stop it talking.
I think I found my way into it because I went back to get my MBA through the university I work with because I could do it for free. So I started going back and taking MBA classes, and at that time I started getting a lot of nonfiction business books, and I think it was just because I was learning the things as I was narrating them. So it was mutually beneficial on both sides of it because of
Oh
that.
yeah, that's fantastic. Again, it's there's just so much stuff out there. And I mean, they even have cookbooks in audio because not everyone that has eyesight, unfortunately. It's very much about being diverse and having it available to all. And the being able to do that, I think it's a gift, and it's great that you're able to, have that as a career as well. So it's always good.
Yeah, a few years ago, I narrated Army field manuals. So the manuals that they give to soldiers,
Mm.
to learn policy and procedure. Did two of those books, and that was some of the driest material I've ever read in my life. But it was still fascinating, just knowing that these soldiers get all of these directives on how they're supposed to, behave in all of these different situations. It was a really fascinating time working on those books. So
Yeah. And we all learn different. There's some of us that we retain the information because we're hearing it versus reading it. And so to be
right,
able
yeah.
to provide that too is great, especially when it comes down to day-to-day jobs or, important things like our, armies. Did you not read the manual, Sergeant? No. Those things like that. Well, I have a couple of personal questions for you if you're ready for me.
Okay.
Okay. When you're not working, what do you do for fun?
Um, so I have two kids and I love spending time with my kids. My son is 14. He's a carbon copy of me. And so we have a lot of similar interests that we kind of explore video games and stuff like that. I miss reading recreationally. I that used to be my escape, and I don't really have a lot of time anymore to just read books that I just want to read for entertainment's sake because I'm always prepping something. So I kind of miss that. I do bonsai. I really love the art of bonsai, and I'm not very good at it, but I explore that a lot in my free time. It's the thing I can do to go and relax when I'm really stressed out. It's a very expensive hobby, but it calms me down. And I'm also like an avid. I love movies and television, so I spend a lot of time just kind of zoning out, getting lost in those kind of stories too.
Okay. I mean, recently here where I live had a garden festival, and no lie, something that stood out to me was the bonsai tent. So it was interesting that you said that about bonsai. I'm like, wow, there's a bonsai tent. Okay. With all different sizes, different shape, sizes too, like little baby that they're just starting, and others that were massive. And I'm like, that's a lot of patience.
It's something that has always been ingrained in me. There's just something about looking at those trees that it literally just relaxes me. And when I was living in New York City, there would always be these street fairs and there would always be some vendor selling bonsai trees. And I've learned now that those bonsai trees are not good bonsai trees. But I would buy them and they would die within a couple of weeks. And so I was a mass bonsai murderer for many years. And then a few years ago for my birthday, my wife found a local bonsai nursery that is actually one of the largest in the country, but it's here in this small town close to me. And we went up there and I just kind of fell in love with it again. And I have not given up my pastime. I still kill them on a regular basis, but I've had more success in keeping them alive. I didn't realize that they're supposed to be kept outside. I thought they were indoor plants. So that was my first big lesson, was realizing that I'm supposed to be keeping them outside. So it does. It just gives me a sense of relaxation working on them in a way that nothing else does, and it's something I can't verbally explain at all. It's a really weird. It's just one of those kind of like connections with nature things that is just really, really weird for
No,
me.
it's for some it might be, but it's interesting. It takes a lot of practice and patience. And preciseness, which is where the calming probably happens for you, and being able to just shut everything out because you have to clip something at a specific way to so it looks the right things and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that is true. Yeah.
Yeah, which would make it a really bad hobby for me because I would overcut something and then guilt written, and then I would continue to cut to try to even it out, and then I end up with a bark.
Yeah, just a solid tree.
Just a tree. So that's why I don't do stuff like that.
When I belong to this study group where I go once a month and we all get together, and the guys that are at this thing are just brilliant at what they do, and they've been doing it for decades, and they have these trees that are like 80 years old and they're so beautiful, And but almost every single time, like I'll bring in some new tree that I just bought and then I start working on, and they're like, okay, what you need to do is cut it all the way down to the bottom of the trunk. And it's like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
Like, and they go, yeah, you need to make it ugly before it gets beautiful. And it's like, that sounds so great and ethereal, but I don't want to kill the tree.
Yeah.
But it is true with bonsai. That is the way that it works. Is like you're trying to make a young tree look like it's old, and so a lot of it is stripping it all the way down to its bare trunk, and then seeing what grows from there. So it's also a very great lesson in patience.
Yes. And also about yourself, you having to strip everything out and take away and take stuff out in order to
Yeah,
get to the bottom of yourself,
yeah. To not be afraid to remove things to see the beauty underneath. Yeah, it's very much true.
as we get all philosophical here on the show. But it's true. I think it's a good way to look at it too. And it's just one of those things that I think we're so constantly on the go, 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 go that a lot of us don't even know what that inner self sometimes looks like because we're like, wait, that requires time. And I don't have that.
Yeah, I mean, it's I we were talking about the eclipse before you started recording, and I think that was one of the things that got me. I've seen partial eclipse before, but I wasn't really prepared for this experience. I mean, it was just amazing. We went to my father-in-law's house. He owns like 17 acres, and we were just sitting in this field waiting for it to happen. And then just for like 4.5 minutes, it was just death. It was just deathly silent. And you just kind of knew, you recognized in the moment, oh my God, there's like 30 million people across the country right now looking at this thing at the same time. And all of these people are people who probably disagree with each other on 1,000 different venues and are used to yelling at each other and criticizing each other. But for this one moment, we're all connected to this thing that somehow ties into the source of where we all come from, where we all find commonality. And there was just something, I don't know, there was just something to it that was just so amazingly cleansing for me because of that, like finding the depth of that sense of who we really are when we're away from all of the bullshit. It was just, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. No, it was a lot, and also to all the buzz around it, and happening. It happened really quickly. People, all this buzz for weeks on end about the eclipse, the eclipse, the eclipse, the eclipse, and people were like, "Okay, great," and then having to schedule things out in order to do it, and that silence in that moment, being able to just be, and then seeing that this huge thing in the sky is now technically not there because it's being covered by something else, and then again it was over really quickly, and but that's also just how life is. We don't get
Everything,
1,000 years.
yeah, no, everything is a moment, and we don't really recognize that. And for whatever it is you believe in, God, nature, Mother Nature, whatever it is, just the fact that it's like something is telling you that in that moment. They're saying, I'm going to show you this once every 600 years.
Yeah.
and and so you better pay attention for the next 4 minutes, or it's not ever going to come back. And it's, of course, I've decided I'm just going to become an eclipse chaser. I'm just going to chase them around the world now. I can't let that be the only one I see before I die. So
I think there's another one coming, isn't there? I did double.
yeah, no, there's one in 2044, but it's only in 2 states, and then there's one in 2045 that goes coast to coast again. And I think I will probably be finding my way to Florida when that hits.
All right.
Yeah. So I should be nicely retired by then. Hopefully still mobile, and I will go down there and watch it.
Well, I mean, here's a nice niche, too, like having book conferences that kind of follow some of this stuff. The eclipse, whenever there's an eclipse, just have it also have a book signing and a conference, and then we can all just go out and have that 4 minutes and then go back to signing.
I love that idea. Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
need a sugar daddy.
Right? So do I. Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
don't we all? But yeah, I would love to do a cut. I just need a sugar daddy. It's expensive to do these things. But anyways, so another question for you.
Uh-huh.
What is your favorite holiday and why?
It's always been Christmas. I think, my son this past year was the first year that he admitted that he didn't believe in Santa Claus. And he and I had this long conversation about it. And I was saying, it's always important for me for children to believe in magic for as long as they possibly can. And there were times as a parent I was like, my God, am I lying to my kid? I just think it's so important for people to believe in magic. And Christmas has always been this magical time that has been about family for me. My uncle would always dress up as Santa Claus and knock on the front door. He didn't come down through our chimney, thank God. Um, and so like there was always this strong belief of family and family tradition during that time period. So it has always been by far my favorite holiday. Again, and just another time that I just have a certain sense of peace about me, which I really usually need throughout the rest of the year. Halloween is a close second.
Okay.
I've always loved the creepy time too.
Creepy or like semi creepy, because there's some people that love like the horror and the gore and like the blood spatters, and others are more about the sneaking in and sneaking out kind of thing, like that, pop up scare.
I do not like blood and gore. I'm not a
Okay.
huge like I'm I am definitely the like the Ring kind of horror
Yes.
fan, not, like I've yet to see Midsummer, which everybody talks about is such a great movie, but I've just heard how violent it is, and I cannot watch those things. Now, that being said, like I loved The Walking Dead. So that, but at times that show even would push boundaries for me. So I'm more creepy. Like I think I'm giving up all of my I think I'm giving up right now. I'm giving up all of my guilty pleasures that you asked about.
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, I think I've gone through. I think bonsai was on that list, so I've gone through everything now. Um, I am a huge paranormal fan. I've had several experiences in my life that makes me believe in that. So I definitely am kind of connected to that, the creepy side of it, not the gorish.
Yeah. Oh my God, I have to send you that meme. I literally just maybe a few days ago, somehow landed on a video, and it was supposed to be Halloween time, the video. And there is a TV screen in the front yard. And it's projecting or showing the ring where he's leaving the well
Well,
and
yeah.
moving forward to the screen, which in the movie she pops out of the screen, right? For
Hmm.
those that haven't watched it, go watch it. And but in this video, it was like, again, it was Halloween time. Everybody's getting trick or treats, and you see that in the middle of the yard. And as she's moving forward, she literally starts popping out of the screen there, and I'm going, oh.
Oh
Like
man.
I know, I'm like, oh. So when you mentioned the ring, I'm like, oh my God. I had to send that to you so you can see it, because for
Oh yeah,
Halloween,
that's cool.
that is neat. I'm like, who do I know that is tiny, that can put on a
That can
wig?
fit in.
Yeah, that I could put in
And
a
crawl out of
box.
a TV.
Yes, yes. In my neighborhood, we're the Halloween house, so it's just one of those where everybody comes over, and we go all out on this in this house kind of thing for our subdivision. So people like it. So I was like, well, that'd be new. All right, so we're gonna have a couple games. Hopefully you'll figure out some more guilty pleasures. But we're gonna start with two truths and a lie, where you tell me three things about yourself, and we have to figure out which one's the lie.
Okay. Okay. Hold on. Let me. I wrote this down so that I wouldn't forget. I
Good.
wanted to be prepared.
Why I give homework?
So, yeah, you said it was homework, so I actually did my homework. Let me. So, I was a dancer in the producer's movie. I am a licensed pilot, and I own an Australian Shepherd named Tucker.
Okay, he's all about the details. Could be a dog named Tucker, but not Australian. He could fly the plane with absolutely no freaking license.
That's
Which would
true.
be
That would be dangerous,
right.
but
It would
yes.
be dangerous, right? You never know. And Dancer in the movie version of the producers. Which one's the lie? Okay, okay. Is the pilot's license one's the lie?
That is the lie. Yes.
Yes.
I've always wanted to fly, and there was a period in my life that I had planned on getting my pilot's license because in the state that I live in, you can get a pilot's license before you can get a driver's license.
Really?
So
Oh, I'm not surprised though.
yeah. So I had planned on doing that, but it was when I started looking into that I found out that I needed glasses. My eyesight was so bad,
Uh-huh.
and so I ended up not doing
Mm, because he didn't want to wear the glasses.
it.
But I feel you. I wear glasses.
I didn't want my life 30,000 feet in the air dependent
Oh, that's
on
true.
classes is kind of what it was.
Right. Oh, okay, okay. Makes sense because, at least you did wanted to make sure that you have them prior to liftoff at the very minimum. But I get
Right.
it. I get it. All right. So you were a dancer in the movie The Producers?
Yeah. I was when I was living in New York, my agent called me and said, so they're filming the movie version of The Producers, and they need dancing stormtroopers, Nazis, for the Springtime for Hitler number. And they're looking for 6 foot tall blonde guys. And I was like, okay. I go, number one, I'm 5'11". And
Close
number
enough.
two, yeah. And it's like, number two, I'm not a dancer. And so the agent said, okay, number one, buy some combat boots. That will give you
Mm-hmm.
another inch. Um, and number two, all you have to do is march down the stage in Sig Heil. And that's it. I was like, okay. So I went to the audition, and it literally, the first part of the audition was standing in front of a measuring tape, and anybody that was not exactly 6 feet got immediately cut. So thank God for the combat boots. I was right at 6 foot. And then we did the simple little marching down the stage thing. And I was like, okay, that's great. And then they had a call back for the exact same thing. So the next day I had to come back and get measured again, do the little marching down the stage thing. And then Susan Stroman, who was the director, went over to her choreographer and like whispered something in his ear. And then he quickly did this like 25-step dance routine. And she was like, yeah, yeah, teach them that. So
Oh
all of a
God.
sudden he taught us this tap dance routine that we had to learn within 5 minutes. And meanwhile, everybody in the audition room was a dancer except for me and one other guy who unbelievably went to my high school. We just randomly found each other at this audition, which was really weird. And so I had to learn this dance in a hurry and then do a tap dance routine in combat boots, which was not easy. Um, and I failed miserably at that, but Susan found me funny. And so I got cast. I'm literally only in the part where I march down the stage. After that part, they clear out and they do the more complicated dance, and I'm not in that portion of the
That
movie.
part.
But yes, so yes, I did. I was a dancer in the producers movie.
Okay. I watch that. See, we're like, okay, where is he? Uh
You
but
see, you
see,
see, you see my helmet. That's the other thing that was so weird about it. They wanted us all to be 6 foot tall and blonde, but then the costume were these like space balls sized Nazi helmets that we had on our heads. So you couldn't even tell that we were blonde or what our real height was. So it was really
huh.
weird.
For those that are listening that are younger and don't know what Spaceballs is, go look it up.
Yes, you
Because I
have
knew
to. Yes.
exactly what you were referring to when you mentioned the movie reference.
Yes, you have to learn Mel Brooks in order to
Yes,
know any of what I'm talking about. Yes.
yes, but it's a good movie too. Seriously, it really is. It's funny.
It's hilarious. Yeah, it's
Yes,
great.
it's a good movie. If you like Star Wars, but also go, make it funny. There you go.
Bill
Uh,
Pullman, John Candy. Yeah, you
oh
can't.
yeah,
And Mel Brooks. Yeah, you can't miss it.
can't miss it. It's a good movie. It's a good oldies and a goodie. But I knew immediately when you referenced it, I was like, oh, okay, now that kind of got it.
I kind of keep forgetting how old I am and the references I'm making.
I mean, listen, as someone that listened to like 60s and 20s musics and stuff like that when I was a kid, um,
Yeah,
it's the same thing with movies. I was watching stuff that was before my time and I'll reference it, and people are like, wait, you're younger than that. I'm like, am I though? My soul is old. Well, you gave us a bunch of guilty pleasure that we have, and for references, that's a question that we do for the patrons. Like, would you rather tell everyone your guilty pleasures or never partake them in those guilty pleasures ever again? And we usually just leave it at you answering that question, either yay or nay, and then kind of have the funny joke of, well, the next time that you come on the show, we'll talk about what those guilty pleasures are. And then I'm
Oh,
like,
okay.
we never do that.
You never bring them back on.
No, I do bring them back on. I have
Oh,
a,
you just never
I
talk about it?
do. It just doesn't. It's just one of those things where we're just catching up, like two friends catching up at a bar or at a bakery, whatever you want to call it, Starbucks. And we never really do. But also, I think people sometimes have this thing about guilty pleasures being specifically sexual. And the funniest part of this having this new question is a lot of things start off with, oh my God, I'm so boring. And then they tell me what their guilty pleasure has been, and it's anything to do with like eating ice cream at 9 o'clock at night or doing this, on quiet times and stuff like that. And none of it has been sexual, which is good because I don't need to know any of that stuff from you guys. I love and adore you all, but no, it's none of our business. But it's also funny too what we consider a guilty pleasure as if it's a negative, but I'm like, nope, I'm still gonna do it. But if you had any other ones that you didn't share, you want to share, I'm all ears.
Well, like I said, I love paranormal. Like I love like those paranormal shows and true crime shows. So that is a guilty pleasure of mine. The other thing, and I guess this feels like a guilty pleasure of mine because I think so many people, I always feel judged for it, but I'm a Disney nerd. I love Disney. My family goes every year. And it's another, again, it's just another one of those things that when I'm down there, I feel like a kid again. And so that's a guilty pleasure of mine too. Again, another very expensive one. I have a lot of very expensive guilty pleasures. That's my problem. Like you said, I need a sugar daddy.
Yeah, don't we all? I was like, a platonic sugar daddy, we're good. We'll figure it out. If I find one, I'll let you know. And if you find one, you'll let me know.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay.
We can share them. That we can share
Yeah,
them. How about
see,
that?
I'm like, listen, Grayson likes to go to Disney.
I've learned all about reverse harems and stuff like that. We can figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. The other question that I have, and I've added it because you guys as guests have gone rogue on me so many times, and then I don't catch on to it until a little later or a little too late to kind of go, no, is you guys end up asking me questions. And I'm like, instead of fighting it, I'm just gonna put it out there. If you guys did have any questions for me, we could talk and have that done. If not, we can go forward. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, I guess I'm curious, like how did you get started in all of this? Like what brought you into the audiobook world and made you decide to do the podcast and everything?
I've been a book lover from infancy. I mean, my mom has a photo of me sitting on the toilet, reading a book. I look kind of cute in it. I'm fine with sharing it, kind of thing, because I'm two. It's just one of those things where I'm like, was I even doing anything? I'm probably sitting at a chair. But anyways, it's just I've always loved stories and kind of being taken away in it. And when I read books, I've always seen like a movie in front of me. And so I started Viviana Enchantress of Books about 15, almost 20 years ago now.
Oh my
Because
gosh, wow.
yeah, I started reviewing books for another blogger, reading between the wines, and met her here in Florida at a book conference that happened here, 20 plus years ago. And she had a blog and she was looking for more reviewers. And so I was like a guest reviewer, pick a book, do the review, post it on her website. I had a dear friend of mine, Dana, that was like, you could have your own. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to read that. And so if I was at my comfort cliff kind of thing, she literally took backed up and started running and shoved me so far out of that comfort cliff that I haven't even looked back. And so did the Enchantress of Books, Viviana Enchantress of Books blog. And now we're celebrating our 10th year with the series because Kelly Mueller from Books and Kisses was her blog. And she and I were, again, online friends. And we started listening to audiobooks. And we realized that there's not a whole lot. The group wasn't huge of people that we knew that was listening to audiobooks. And, you have National Pie Day and National Fill in the Blank Day and Happy Holiday That's Fake Hallmark Insert Here Day. And came across the fact that June is Audiobook Month and no one was saying anything about it. There wasn't
Yeah, I don't even
anything.
know that I knew that. Okay.
Right. So there's to this day, a lot of folks sometimes don't know, except for because they've been, in this for a little bit longer and know about the podcast that they know. So we were both like, how is no one talking about this? And she's like, we should do it. We'll invite some of our favorite authors and narrators that we've been working with, either reviewing or meeting at conferences. And we're like, sure, it won't be that hard. Google Hangout was a good friend of ours for a while, for those that remember that.
Yeah.
And we just, did it. And we were like, well, it's the month of June, so we'll do it there because that just makes sense. And why don't we just do it the whole month long? And I was thinking maybe like once a week, and we ended up once a day because we had enough interest. So we're like, we'll just do an episode a day.
Oh my
And
gosh, wow.
I know every time I say, I'm like, I think I'm good, I'm going to swap out the series and figure out what that looks like. And then next time comes around, I'm doing it all over again. I love it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for myself now because Kelly has an adult job and her own business, and it's around this time frame because it's taxes, so she can't do it with me anymore. um so I've kind of kept that mantle going on my own, and like here we are now celebrating 10 years of this series, and it's been great. I mean, and we've had some really big, I mean, we had Luke Daniels, Iggy Toma. I was the first person to do an interview with Sebastian York, and I was also the first person to have him back twice. Like I said, I kept coming for more. He was great. And I've been able to, it happened about 5 years ago. Amy Dawes, in this case, it's Amy's fault. Like kind of like Marnie's, some of the stuff is her fault for you. Amy is mine for the podcast because she was a guest in the series, and she's like, this would be kind of cool if you did it all the time. And I'm like, Amy, I can barely breathe. If I do 30 days, I can't do this for the entire year. She goes, no, you dumb dummy. And that's how tired I was too, by the way. When she brought it up, and then she's like a podcast. I mean, they have two crime podcasts. People realize how to get rid of a body. I'm like, hey, I think I kind of know how to do that too. But I digress. And she's like, yeah, consider it. And looked into it, what it would require, because it would be more on a consistent basis, similar to you in upgrading equipment and figure out what that looks like and where to record and all that fun stuff behind the scenes. And I figured it out. And here we are now on season 5 of the podcast itself, so 5 years, and haven't really looked back. It's been great.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you said that you like firsts. So do you remember your first audiobook?
Ooh, I do. Oh my God. Sheesh. So I remember Pinocchio in a vinyl disc. And so it was a Disney
Yeah.
version of the Pinocchio story. I still have it. It's like something.
And it's so amazing that you say that because yeah, my God, I had those too, but back then, like you didn't call them audiobooks. Like I
No.
didn't even think about the fact that those audiobooks existed before audiobooks existed. That's amazing. I never even really thought about that.
Yeah, or like we remember books on tape, maybe, right?
Right.
But I remember that as being one of the first times of storytelling for me was, Pinocchio in my, vinyl, and listening to that and just being able to like do it again and and then again with the kind of thing. But as an adult too, there's a few that I started. I mean, it's one of those things where sometimes I don't remember, but in other times I'm like, what was it, this one or was it that one? And at the end of the day, there's just so many great stories that technically they all become a first because we
Hmm.
experience it for the first time. But it was definitely something that I was like, oh, okay, great. And it was just because I wanted to read more books, but adulting happened and I had to, full-time day job and
Yeah.
driving to and from. So I'm like, oh, let's do this audiobook stuff. And there's a few of them that I continue to on repeat sometimes when I need to be in a good mood or have a good laugh and stuff like that. So I'll have those. But I still have that Pinocchio vinyl.
Wow, that's
So
amazing.
it is. Yeah. So fun.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, before we go, because I can keep you talking forever, tell us what you're currently working on and what's coming up next for you that you can share.
Okay, so I had to write these down too to make sure that I don't reveal anything. So right now, as I just said, I'm working on a sci-fi series, which I actually finished the second book of that today, and then just recently released was Perfect Fit with Sadie Kincaid, and then I have Kayla Gross. I have 2 books with her coming up that have been announced, which is Trick Shot and Rope Me In. Releasing soon is the last 2 books in the Monty J Hollow Boy series, which is Blood We Crave 1 and 2, and that will be released. I think the next one, the third book, is released on the 16th, and then I think the second, the last book a week later, I think.
Nice.
And then also we're finally finishing up the Daughter of a Serial Killer series by C.M. Stunich, and that book is being recorded right now. It's a monster. It's like 1,050 pages, and so we're finishing that up. And I think it's released in August. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm pretty much booked all the way for the rest of the year. So I've got a lot of stuff, but a lot of it I can't even talk about
Yeah,
on
which is
threat
fine.
of death.
It's called an NDA.
Yeah.
But I get it. I mean, I've always also like I've told some of my, even sometimes the authors that don't want to give out their stuff. I'm like, well, can you at least tell me if you're going to be like a pirate or, the guy next door or a firefighter? And they're like, oh yeah, I can do that. And then that way we don't know anything except for the fact that you're going to be, a swordsman and blah blah blah. So
Well, it feels like the very few times that I've ever tried to release just a little bit of information, suddenly people guess it, and it's like because they've read the book before, and I didn't realize that the
uh,
book. So it's like a lot of times I put my foot in my mouth by
okay, you did.
revealing things that I don't even realize I'm revealing. So
Yeah, some books are specifics. Like if you do a specific city or a name or something like that, it'd be like, they know, someone knows it. Someone will always figure it out. But no, this is great. It's a great, it's good to be booked for the full rest of the year. It's always a good thing, especially from a freelancing perspective. It's awesome.
oh God, yeah, it's really nice knowing that you have all that stuff coming up, and it's I've got some openings in the fall, so all of you authors out there, I am available for the fall. But yeah, it's really nice, having kind of a slate of things coming up. So I'm very fortunate.
And also authors, just because they say that they may be fully booked XYZ timeline or up until this or whatever, reach out to the narrators anyway. Stuff happens, openings occur. They might just be like, for you, yes. And they'll figure out a way. Who needs sleep? you know?
Exactly,
So,
right?
so it doesn't hurt to ask. So if you're interested in a narrator and you've heard that maybe they'd be, or they themselves have said, hey, I'm fully booked until the year Timbuktu happens or whatever, just ask. You never know.
Yeah, yeah. It's you never know when you can slip something in, or if you get ahead in the schedule, or
Yeah. Or something gets pulled and now you have an opening.
right, exactly. And there's
Yeah.
I've created a bucket list for myself, and there's so many authors and co-narrators that I want to work with. So there's a lot of things that I would lose some sleep over to make sure that I get an experience to do. So
See, just ask. That's good.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much for being part of this year's Audiobook Lovin Series. It's been so great talking to you.
thank you for bringing me on. I really appreciate it.
Yes, and thank you for being the first of the series for this year.
I'm somebody's first. I love it.
Yay. Everyone, thank you for hanging out with us and supporting me and this series now for 10 long years. We're going to be having lots of fun. Please follow Grayson on his social media. We'll be including all of the info on this landing page over at Viviana Enchantress of Books. Make sure to follow the socials again, and we will see you next time. Until next time, happy listenings.